Hello everyone, welcome back to Data Engineer Labs. In today's episode, we will learn what a table is, we will create a table, we will insert our very first data into the table and retrieve the same data using select statement. Here is the today's complete agenda. We will have a quick look on what we did in the last episode, and then we will understand what a database table is, along with understanding rows and columns. We will also see few of the common SQL data types used in SQL, and then we will create our very first table. We will insert very first record in that table, and then we will retrieve that data using select statement. After that, we will look into the hands-on assignments, and then finally we have a bonus content for today. So without wasting any further time, let's go ahead and have a quick look on what we did in the last episode. So in the last episode, we installed our SQL Server. We installed our SQL Server Management Studio. We connected to the SQL Server using SQL Server Management Studio. And then we created our very first database named as Data Engineer Labs. And we executed our first SQL queries. Now before moving ahead into today's session, let's just understand what a table is. So a table is an organized container of related data. It stores one type of information, and that information is organized using rows and columns. It is pretty much similar to our Excel worksheet. Now for example, when a company have new employee join, we will store that record into the employee table. If we have a new customer, the customer information will be stored in the customer table. And for the orders, we will maintain a separate table called orders, and we will maintain all the order details in that order tables. Similarly, the products. Here is an example of an employee table. So you can see there is a horizontal line which is called as rows, and then there is a vertical line which is called as columns. We will understand rows and column in depth in the upcoming slides, but this is the look of a table where you can see in the employees, all the employee details are available in the form of rows and columns. Okay, now let's understand rows and columns. So rows is one complete story about the employee. So for example, if an employee 1 joins, we will store all the information of that employee in one row or one horizontal line. For example, what is the ID of the employee, what is the name of the employee, what is the department of the employee, and what is the salary of the employee. So you can see all the information related to one employee. For example, employee ID 1 is stored in one horizontal line, which is our rows. Similarly, for the employee ID 2 or employee Sara, we have all the information stored in the another row, which is a row 2. Again, similarly, we have next employee David, and all the information for the David is stored in another horizontal line. So all these horizontal lines are called as a rows, and it reflects information about one particular record, or for this instance one particular employee. Now coming to columns, column is a one specific detail about every employee. Okay, so let's say we want to see what is the ID of the John, then we will go to the ID section, which is vertical line like this. Now all the IDs for all the employee is into this column. So this vertical line holds IDs of each employees. Similarly, the second column holds name of the each employee, and the third column holds department of each employee, and so on. So if we have to look for one individual attribute, and then we will look for columns. For example, I want to know the salary of the John. So we'll have to go to the salary column and look for the row where John fits, like employee ID 1, which is row 1, and what is the salary of the John. So this is how we define rows and columns. It will become more clear as we move along this course. But for now, let's just understand all the horizontal lines containing a complete story about one employee is called as rows, and one specific information about all the employees is called as columns. So before we move ahead, let's see the database structure. Now let's connect everything together. A database has multiple tables. Now a table has multiple rows, and each row represents one complete record, and one column represents one specific type of information about all the records, which is called data. Once you understand this relationship, learning SQL becomes much easier. Now let's see few of the common data types used in SQL. So before creating a table, SQL needs to know what kind of data each column will store. That's where the data types comes in. Let's look into the few of the common data types which are used in SQL. Now integer is used for the whole number. For example, employee IDs like 1, 2, 3 and so on. Now varchar is used to store the characters. For example, employee name or department and so on. Now date stores dates like joining dates or birthday or order date and so on. Now finally the decimal, which stores the number with the decimal values, for example salaries or prices or order amount and so on. So now let's quickly create our very first table. But before creating table live, let's just understand the create table statement here, what it is and how it works. So for creating a table, we start the SQL statement with create space table and then the name of the table. For this instance, we are using employee. And then within the round bracket, we specify what all columns are present for that table and their data types. For example, employee ID and the data type is int or integer. And then separated by comma, we specify another column, which is for this instance employee name, which is a varchar, means a text. And we are also limiting the length of the text as 100 here. So it cannot store any character or any text which is more than 100 characters. And then again separated by comma, we are giving another column name, which is department, and the data type of the department, which is again varchar or text, which has a limit of 50. And then lastly, salary, which is a decimal part. Here now we have specified 10 comma 2, means it can have a 10 digit whole integer and then 2 digit decimal values. So for example, it can has value as a 10.0 and 0. So this number represents the first value, which is 10. So it can have a maximum length up to 10. For example, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. But after the dot, the decimal precision is gonna be only 2 digits, like 00 or 01 or 99, something like that. Now as we understood our create table statement, now let's go ahead and execute this in our query editor. Now let's create our first table. So for that, let's open a new query editor. We can rename this as a first table. We can also rename the other query as a first database. First database create first database and save it, and then we'll rename it. So in this query editor, let's go ahead and execute use data engineer labs, so that our session is using that engineer lab database. Now we can verify that using select db underscore name, and let's see we are still using data engineer lab. Yeah. So now we are under data engineer labs database. Okay, now let's create our first table. So for that, create table, and in the name of the table employee, and then we will specify all the attributes of the table, which is first is employee ID and the data type is integer or int, and then we have employee name employee name, which is a data type of varchar, right? And let's put a limit to this 100. Then department, and again department is a varchar, and we have a limit of 50. And then lastly salary, which is a decimal, and decimal of 10 digits and 2 decimal precisions. And let's close the bracket and then terminate the query. Now let's execute this, and once we execute this, commands executed successfully. Now let's check into our Object Explorer. Inside our database, Data Engineer Labs, we have tables, and inside the table, if we refresh our Object Explorer, now we see the table employee created. To verify the table which we created is correct or not, what we can do, we can expand the table. We can check the columns which says employee ID, which is an integer, and it is null. Null means here basically this table will accept null values also for this column. Same for employee name, which is a varchar of 100 characters, and it is a nullable. So we can again have null employee names. And then department, which is again a varchar of 50, and it can have null data. And then the salary of a decimal of 10 digit and 2 decimal precision, which is again nullable, and we can have null data. Also, we can go ahead and right click and script table as create to and new query editor window. So this will show us the create table statement which is used to create this table. So now if we see from the line number 11, it is giving us create table DBO, which is a by default keyword used by SQL Server before any table name. So it will say DBO employee ID, employee, which has a column employee ID, which is integer, and it can have null data. Again employee name, which is a varchar of 100, and it can have null data, and same for department and salary. This script is mostly used to promote this table to higher environments like production. So once a developer creates a table, he or she can export this create statement using script table as create to and statement, and we can push this statement to productions where the table will be created using this definition. Okay. There is another way where we can see what all the attributes are available using our select statement. So we can simply run select star from table, which is our employee table, and if we execute this command, this will show us all the columns. Since there is no data available, that's why it is giving no results. But if you see, the column names are coming like employee ID, employee name, department, and salary. Now let's go ahead and insert our first record into this table. For that, we will write insert into. Now insert into the table name, which is employee, insert into employee, and we can specify values keyword, and then we can specify what value we want to insert, and that has to be within the round bracket. So let's say we want to insert employee ID 1, and then the name, any text which we want to execute inside our SQL statement, we have to give it into single quote, for example JOHN, and then comma, department, which is IT, and then salary, which is 60K or 60,000. So if you notice, the integer or the decimal values, for example 1 or 60K, I'm not giving it into single quote, but any text value, for example name and the department IT, we have to provide it inside single quote. So now let's go ahead and execute this. And if you see here, it says one row affected and the query is completed. Now if we execute again, select star from employee, it should give us one record. So let's go ahead and execute select star from employee. Now if you see, it is giving me employee ID 1, employee name John, department is IT, and salary is 60,000. Now if you also notice, since while creating the table we specified the salary as decimal with 2 decimal precision, it has automatically populated 2 decimal precision to the salary. So now it is showing 60,000.00, which is same as 60,000, but it is the way of storing the data. Now let's go ahead and insert multiple records. For that, again same statement, insert into employee, and then values, what value we want to insert, and then we can have multiple set of record inserted with comma separated. So every set we have to give it inside a square round bracket and separated by comma. We can give multiple records. For example, I can give ID 2 where name is Sarah, and department is HR inside single quote as it is a text value, and then salary is 55k. And then similarly I can give another record which is 3, and then name is David and department is finance, and salary is 70k. Now let's terminate this query, and if we execute this, it will insert these 2 records into. Now you can see here in the output pane it says 2 rows affected. And now if we run again the select star from employee, it will give us 3 records. Now if you see, all the employees, employee ID 1, 2, 3 are present. Now employee name John, Sarah and David is present. Department IT, HR and finance is present, and salary 60,000, 55k and 70k is present. Now in this insert into statement we have given the full list of data. So for example, if we want to insert only ID and name, then how can we insert it? So for that we will do insert into employee, and then we have to specify what columns we are inserting. For example, employee ID, we are inserting, let's say, employee ID, comma, employee name. Okay, employee name. So we will specify this, and then we will say values. What are the values for it? And we will say values, and then again we have to give it into the square bracket. Now employee ID is 4 and employee name is Alice. Now let's go ahead and insert this, run this command. Now you see one row affected, and after that if I run select star from employee, now if you see here, we have first 3 records, employee ID 1, 2, 3, employee name John, Sarah and David, department as IT, HR and finance, and salary as 60k, 55k and 70k. But the 4th record, when we inserted, we only specified employee ID and employee name, which is employee ID is 4 and employee name is Alice. So by default, it has given the other 2 values are null. So this is what it means when we have a particular column selected as nullable. So whenever we are not having any information about that column, default value given to that column will be null. Now we can also select only one attribute, for example employee name. So we can run select employee name from employee table. So we can just simply run select employee name from employee, which will give us all the names of the employee present in the employee table. So we had 4 employees present: Jan, Sarah, David and Alice. So all 4 are listed here. So using select statement, we can extract all the information like select star, or we can extract a particular information using select and the attribute name, and we can have more than one attribute also separated by comma. For example, what we can do here is we can select employee ID comma employee name from employee. So we can have one attribute selected or multiple required attributes selected separated by comma, and if we execute this, now you see we got employee ID and employee name. So this is how we extract information or we retrieve information from the table. Okay, so for today we created our very first table, employee, and then we inserted our first data into the employee table. We inserted multiple data into the employee table, and we also inserted partial data into the employee table. And then we extracted the data, the complete data, using select star, and we selected only partial data from employee table using select and then the attribute name like employee ID, employee name and all from the employee table. So that's all for today. Now today we created our very first table named as employee, inserted data into that employee table, and then we also inserted multiple data into that employee table, and then we retrieve that data using select statement like select star from employee or select a particular column name from employee. So for today's assignment, you can create a table named as student. You can use the columns as student ID, student's name, age of the student and the course. I want to think about the specific data types which you can assign to each of these columns. Let me know if you have any difficulties in the comment section. I will help you out. And then try to insert 5 records in the student tables, and you can also retrieve all those 5 records using select statement and verify if all the data is populated correctly. You can also try to retrieve a particular record such as student IDs or only student name and so on from the table. Now time for the bonus content. Have you noticed or do you know if why SQL is case insensitive? So you can write the SQL in any casing, upper casing, lower casing, camel casing, or even you randomly uppercase any character or lowercase any character, but it will work fine. So the reason behind this is SQL was designed to be easy to read and write, almost like English, so that developers don't have to worry about specifying or capitalizing or maintaining a right order. So you can simply go ahead and write the query in any case and it will work fine. So for example, we have 3 commands here: select star from employee, where select from and E of the employee is uppercase and all are in lowercase, and it will work fine. And even if we do select star from employee, everything is in lowercase, then also it will work very much fine. And even if you see the last statement where we have very random uppercase and lowercasing, it will work fine. So let me go ahead and execute this command and show you how exactly it will work. These are the 3 commands which we saw from the example, like select star from employee, where we have almost everything in uppercase. It gives us the same information. We have same statement, everything in lowercase, which also gives us the same information. And even we have the same statement in random casing, and it will give us the same information. That's all for now. If you have any doubts or questions regarding today's session, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to answer it as soon as possible. Till then, keep building, keep experimenting, and thank you.